Perfect. So welcome Rohit, welcome Prateek to Xartup again. Beginning with just a brief introduction about uh, Decentro for the folks who have joined us. Decentro is a YC-backed company which provides plug-and-play APIs for banking integrations in India and Africa. Interestingly, they help reduce your integration time by 10x and capital expenditure by 80%. That's how they are trying to revolutionize the API banking system. And moving forward with a brief introduction of Rohit, though we'll hear from him as well. He exited MyPullion, which was India's first social payment platform. They exited it to Wimpo and then PayU. Prateek was in the investment banking side with Hanam and Partners, and then moved on to the VC side before starting off Decentro. So moving forward to the conversation, uh, Rohit, if you can give us an overview of how was your life before starting Decentro, how was your journey with MyPullion first of all?
Sure. Hey everyone, good to connect. Yeah, so I think that first startup pretty much I would say taught a lot, right, in terms of running the company, and most of the our efforts went into just figuring out how to really navigate this world, right? Especially because what we were solving was, and this is true across all the companies that I've run, to try to focus on problems that we have faced ourselves. Like it's very hard for me to personally solve something which I cannot relate to and I have not faced it directly. So yeah, the first one was also pretty close to myself. Back in the college, we all used to have this challenge of how do we really share money with friends, right? And I'm sure many of you, I can see, are young people, and I'm sure you are, in college or just graduated from college, you can relate to this problem, right? So sharing money with friends is an extremely uncomfortable affair, right? Nobody likes to talk about money with friends, right? And people actually lose friendships over money as well. And I've seen that happen. So yeah, I think this was really what triggered the whole idea of how do we make peer-to-peer payments fun. And the reason people were not doing payments was because it's so boring, right? And it's so inconvenient, right? And this is like, we're talking about 2014, right? 7 years back. There was no UPI. So yeah, there was only, wallet or cash. So this was essentially the whole idea that triggered MyPool. And we scaled up to around 200,000 users. Of course, we went through a couple of pivots. Earlier, we were doing something on the B2B side, then we transitioned to B2B2C, and then finally B2C directly as a mobile application. And then, when UPI came along, we were one of the first movers, along with PhonePe and a couple of other applications to adopt it in the market. And yeah, so I think that was pretty interesting and very, I would say jumbled up time as well, because a lot of things weren't clear. We were doing pretty much everything for the first time, right? Everything from hiring to scaling to fundraising, and right? So no ideas at all. And but yeah, I think our angels were very helpful, our advisors were very helpful, and investors were very helpful as well. And yeah, we built out a great team. I'm really lucky to have been in the right place at the right time. And finally got an exit at around 2017. This was the same time, when WhatsApp was announcing its entry into India for peer-to-peer payments. And yeah, I think that after the acquisition, then it was a whole different journey altogether. And probably we can discuss it along the way. We shifted the entire team from Delhi to Bangalore after that. Yeah.
That's amazing. Running a fintech startup already might have given you a very big edge before starting Decentro, I assume.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely has, right? Most importantly, in terms of the network, the connections, right? It's much easier to just give a call to somebody and tell them, okay, this is something we've done before, right? And you were a partner in that particular journey, so they're more receptive, right? And they're able to, I would say, take on the bet early on rather than take it later. So I think the initial 0 to 1 journey becomes easier the second time around. But the startup is still a startup, right? So it doesn't become as easy as people expect it to be. But yes, some things definitely change.
Definitely. Thank you, Rohit. So moving on to Prateek, how was your early life with the investment banking ecosystem, VC ecosystem that you explored with Guild Capital? If you can give us an overview of that.
Hey, thanks. Can you can you guys hear me? Fine.
Yes, Prateek, we can.
Awesome. Hey, thanks everyone. Thanks Shubham. Good to meet everyone. So yeah, I think my early life been quite hectic. I guess long hours. I think I was just beginning to understand the basics of corporate finance. So I did my engineering and could not resonate to what I learned back there, because practically I think the real life was quite different than what we had been taught back then. So wanted to gain some practical experience, and that's when I think most of my early days just went on to understanding how do businesses work, what are different sectors, how do you analyze companies, and what makes certain companies successful. So that's what I guess that's what my early life spanned across. I specifically looked at banking as well in my early days. So was really curious here. Malab, you deposit like 1,000 rupees in a bank, and how the hell does that bank make money at the end of the day, because the bank is giving you interest. So all those questions sort of like wondered, I think puzzled me in the initial years of my career. And later, I think during my stint at Guild Capital, I looked at a lot of startups, looked at a few fintech businesses as well. And yeah, I think that's when all the pieces of the puzzle sort of started to come together. And yeah, I think just to answer your question, Shubham, the early years of my career was more trying to experiment a lot of things, trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work, and also I think uh, when I was at the investing side of things, or when I was at the investment banking side of things, I was analyzing a lot of companies, but I was not really executing. So that is something that I realized during the course of my career, and I've done a lot of random roles as well, apart from what was assigned to me. So yeah, I think I hope that helps.
Perfect. Yeah, I can resonate with your thoughts when you're talking about long hours and investment banking, what it means and all. Though in startup as well, we do have long hours, but I mean, the mentality is different, I guess, over here. So
Yeah.
moving forward, Prateek and Rohit, how did you both meet? How did you both decided to work on a particular project that is Decentro? Was it like something which was already fixed that you are going to work on fintech after exiting your venture, Rohit, and after coming from a VC background, Prateek? How was it like? If you can walk us through that journey?
Yeah, I can take that. Oh, you want to take that, Rohit?
No, yeah, go on.
Hey, so yeah, I think so. Just to sort of add, so my previous career, I'll just like give a more detailed background on my previous role. So at Guild Capital, we sort of did very early stage investments into startups. So these are startups which just had a little traction and they needed one round of funding to sort of scale up. And I looked at a lot of startups, across consumer, across fintech, and realized that at one point I'm just sitting out there and analyzing businesses. I'm not really executing, or I'm not really going on the ground. In fact, I set up the Bombay office of Guild Capital, and there were many ad hoc responsibilities that I just took up, and I really enjoyed sort of solving difficult problems. Uh, I think late 2020 is when a bunch of these neobanks started coming in, globally, and I think there was just I had been tracking banking for a long time, and I wondered why banking is not disrupted yet, right? Why do I only have to deal with the top 5 banks or the top 6 banks? Why isn't a neobank in the country yet? Also, I think there were a lot of moving pieces in the fintech ecosystem, or rather the banking ecosystem, and that sort of puzzled me a lot. So I spent a lot of time talking to fintech founders, and I think Rohit happened to be one of them. And every conversation with a fintech founder was sort of like a learning experience for me. And yeah, I think just I spent about 4 years at Guild, and at the end of my fourth year, I realized that hey, I think this is something that I want to I want to work at fintech. Then I think I saw Rohit's post on LinkedIn that he's hiring for Decentro, and I just shot him a cold email. And yeah, I think we started interacting after that, and yeah, I think we had a couple of conversations. We had a couple of reference checks as well. Yeah, I think having spoken to a lot of founders, you know I knew what I was looking for in the next role, and I think that sort of I think that sort of bandwidth, or that sort of chemistry just matched up. And yeah, I think in the middle of the pandemic, I switched cities from Bombay to Bangalore quite early days, so we had to be located in the same city as well. Yeah, I think that's how it happened. Yeah, quite an unusual story, I guess. But yeah, I think Rohit, you want to add something on top of it? You can.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think that pretty much covers it. Yeah. And yeah, it was definitely, I would say, one of the most difficult times to start a company, right? By default. So the whole world was going topsy turvy, and but yeah, as I say, when you know it's right, it's right. So you just have to like get head on that. That's the thing. That's the philosophy we live by when it comes to running a company. And yeah, probably we'll discuss this, along the way as well. Right? So I think yeah, we just have to take the call.
So Rohit, did you know like a platform like Startup exists back then or no?
At that time, no, not really.
So yeah, I think otherwise I would have got competition, I guess. Yeah. So.
That's amazing. So moving forward, Rohit and Prateek, I'd like to know if the idea was already decided, like you were trying to disrupt the banking ecosystem, you were into fintech for sure, hardcore fintech folks. So what was the story behind starting up Decentro as a company? Did you try talking to users? Was it something inherent that you wanted to change this thing for sure, making a change in this world? How was it like?
Yeah. So I think the whole changing the world thing is really, overhyped. Mostly, I'd say. I think like first just try to change something around you, then think about the world. I think the world changes on its own. You don't need to worry about that. Yeah. No. Again, going back to the philosophy that I mentioned, right? I only run companies which I have personally faced challenge on. So and I think that's extremely important, for a lot of entrepreneurs to have gone through that pain themselves, because they can then relate to the customer much more, right? And more importantly, they have that drive, right, when the chips are down, right? And when the market is down. So that drive is very important. So I think this is the reason why I focused on something which has been sort of bothering my company as well as the company that acquired my company, which is Zipmo and PayU, over the last 6-7 years. And this was just working with a bank and integrating with the bank. And I think one of the largest things that really bothered these companies, as we saw over 5-6 years, was things had not changed that fast when it comes to the quality of integrations with the bank. So to give you an example, we had spent almost half a year. This was in 2015, working with Yes Bank, which is one of the most forward-looking banks, at least in the early days, when it comes to APIs. Right? And yeah, we thought initially probably over time things would change. Like just spending 6 months on a basic infrastructure with a banking API, it doesn't really make sense, right, for a fintech company. A fintech company, like when it's starting out, hardly has a runway of a couple of years. So they have to just focus on execution. They cannot focus on infrastructure. And this is the pain that AWS took away from hosting services or starting up a server. Like imagine how hard setting up a server was 15 years back, or setting up your website was 15 years back. Like you literally had to spawn physical servers in your room or in your data center, right, and then run website on it, or a server on it. Now it's just like a few clicks, I'm on Amazon and I can just spin up servers of any capacity that I need, right? So that's the level of abstraction that you have now in computing. So this is the same thing we believe will happen in banking as well. And you can see some early signs. Like you can look at the fintech apps that you use. Like you'll see there are some banks in the backend, but you don't realize there are banks in the backend at times. Look at UPI, for example. There's a whole complex network of banks working together on a common network, just making your money transfer go from bank A to bank B in seconds, right? I mean, that's amazing. Like nothing like that exists anywhere in the world in terms of instant money transfer. So yeah, this was exactly the idea that working with a bank has been challenging and nobody has been solving for it. Most of the people were either focused on the consumer side or the merchant side, but nobody was solving this middle infrastructure there. And yeah, that's essentially how we decided this needs to be solved once and for all.
Perfect. So moving ahead, if you can simplify what Decentro does in a layman sense for the audience over here, that would be really helpful, because I made it a bit complex by saying API, banking integration.
Yeah.
Maybe something very difficult for understand. So if you can just simplify how it works.
Sure. Yeah, Pratik, you want to give it a shot?
Yeah. So let me take a live example, right? You've seen these QR codes, right, in your Kirana stores. I'm sure you just scan those QR codes and boom, like the payment is done, right now, who generates that QR code, and when you process payment from your bank account to the merchant's bank account, what bank account is that, and then when does the money get settled to the end merchant? Like, for example, let's say you purchased $1,000 worth of snacks, right? When does the $1,000 reach the end merchant? So you need a bank in the middle to sort of enable that workflow. So tomorrow you start a kirana store and you want to start accepting payments. You want to place that QR. You will need to deal with a bank, and if you're going to knock some big bank door, they are not going to. They'll probably not entertain you. So you need you need something to interface with the banks, and we are that middle layer that sort of helps you facilitate the creation of the QR code, facilitates moving money from, let's say, one temporary account to the kirana store's current account. So to deal with the bank, or let's say, this is just one of the many examples that I've given. But let's say if you want to create a payment infrastructure or a card infrastructure or a bank account infrastructure, so we are that middle layer that will help you launch that use case, in a few, in a week or so. So the best example is you've opened a store and you want to just, and again, this is not something that we do, but you open a store and you just want to place a QR. We'll help you place that QR. We'll help you move money around. So I guess that's the best way to put it in a practical sense of things. Maybe one more analogy would be, let's say you want to take a loan, right? So when you want to go take a loan, the first thing that happens is you need to verify yourself as an individual. So you need to prove that you're authentic. So you need to have a valid PAN number. You need to have a valid Aadhaar number. We help you verify those documents. That's the first thing. As soon as your documents are verified, the lender is going to, let's say, run some algorithmic checks and then decide that, hey, you're eligible for a 1 lakh rupee loan. So the lender disburses that 1 lakh rupees to your bank account, for example. So that disbursement process is something that we power as well. And let's say at some point you have to repay that loan, and you've set up automatic repayments. So the whole mechanism of pulling money out of your bank account, either using automated mandates or either using UPI, is something that we do as well. So I think that's just like one of the many use cases that we've done, that we've powered. And I think it's a mix of when you look at the whole product, it's a mix of KYC, which is identification, payments, which is moving money around, bank accounts, which is creation of creation of savings accounts, creation of current accounts. It can be cards as well. So you will find a bunch of these neobanks come up that have their own branded card. So that is something that we power as well. I think that's pretty much just to sort of summarize, we are that middle infrastructure layer. There are banks in the back end. There are government institutions in the back end. There are lenders in the back end. And you can choose whichever bank you want to integrate with. You can decide what is the use case that you want to power. Just plug into a platform, and you can.
Pratik, I think you went to mute.
How long ago did I go?
No, just a few seconds back.
Just a few seconds. So essentially, so you choose what is the use case that you want. You choose which bank or which lender you want to work with, and you just plug into your platform, and you can launch in 2 to 3 weeks. So what Rohit was saying is that we reduce that 6-month timeline to a few weeks. And this is just the beginning, right? There are so many fintech ideas that are moving up, and I think fintech is going to be play a major role, I think, in the next 4 to 5 years. And I think we are right at the sweet spot where a bunch of fintechs, if they are looking at anything from a banking perspective, they can just use our platform and go live, and just launch in a week. I hope that helps. Happy to sort of take any follow-up questions.
Perfect, Pratik. Yes, I mean, that is pretty clear. So moving ahead, I'd like to understand, how did you validate your idea by talking to users? We are obviously covering a broad topic of talking to users, the mom test framework by YC, it's something that folks have been through. So if you can share your insights on how was this journey with Decentro?
Is we really were solving, for our own experiences as well, right? So if you look at it, we had faced that challenge, early on in the previous venture. So we knew, okay, this is sort of, how fintech works with a bank, and this is the journey that they go through. Right? So this is exactly what we can optimize. And obviously, we already
customers which had signed up early on, right, in the journey as well. This was like before even launching the product, and that really helped. Right, that really helped us validate how to structure the product. So I'll have to probably go a bit specific here, but at a very high level, the first product that we launched was in terms of enabling collections and payouts for your marketplaces, and your SME focused SaaS players or B2B players, so to say. And there's something called a virtual account is an instrument that we enable, for some of these consumers and businesses to collect money seamlessly and pay out seamlessly. And obviously, once we started talking to the market, we realized that the market was huge and there were already a couple of players which had done that in the early on. But there was still a wide domain to be covered. Like those existing companies had not really done justice to it because they were not API first. They were going more into vertical payment gateway flows. So yeah, I think having that initial lineup of customers, and few of those customers carried over, from the previous company as well. So that was really good to have. And yeah, having our own experience, that really helped. That was really how we started talking to them. Then I think once we got really to the product launch and the whole, out there in the media and everything, then the inbound started to flow in, right? And inbounds have been amazing for us, and I think that's one of the great, things about this business. We really like the way it can organically grow in, where people reach out to us with their pain point exactly, and tell us, okay, hey, this is what we need. Can you solve it for us?
Thanks, Rohit. So moving forward, how did you gain your first customers? Was it like inbound leads after putting it into the media, or did you leverage your own network to gain those first customers? If you can share some insights.
Yeah, the first few customers came in through the network. Like literally, the first two were through the personal network, and then I think the remaining ones came in through the inbounds, right? And yeah, most of them. I mean, our sign-up process is fairly simple. People just find us either through social media, word of mouth, referrals, or press releases, etc. And our marketing team does an amazing job right now in terms of generating some amazing content to keep them hooked. And yeah, it's just a simple sign-up form. Hardly takes a few seconds. And yeah, within a day or maximum a few hours, they get a call back for setting up a listing.
Perfect. So moving ahead, we'd like to understand how was the journey ahead? Like, what was the competitive landscape at that particular time, like a few years back? And how did you decide that this is your USP, this is the blue ocean space that you want to cater, or did you have some competitors over there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think the competition was not as intense, primarily because this is still, I would say, a fairly new space for the Indian ecosystem. And not just India, I think overall you'll see in the world, there are a few companies that have come up in the last, I would say, 4 or 5 years max. Right? So that's the average age of the companies, I would say. So they're not companies with over 10 years or 15 years old in this space yet. There are a few older companies that are trying to enter into it, but that's a different domain altogether. So from a new company perspective, I think we were, I would say, in a good position. We really had, I would say, a head start, and still have a head start, of course, in terms of the products that we are launching and the ones that we've launched already. Yet there were some players, and there are still some players that overlap, with around, I would say, 25-30% of our business, for example, which is a good thing, because I mean, if there was no competition, I would really be surprised. Okay, something is wrong, right? Why is there nobody doing that? So yeah, no, I think there's still some competition there, but not really something that would have bothered us or still bothers us in a big way. Speed is something which we realize is paramount in really making sure that we stay ahead of competition. Because one of the things, as you can imagine, if you're building something on the infrastructure, once you get locked in on that infrastructure, it's very hard for you to move out of that, right? Just like the way computing and the way you're hooked on one particular, say, API ledger, or if you are using, say, a particular coding style. I'm sure there are many developers here in the audience. If you're using a particular library, it's very hard to move out of that again, right? You pretty much have to rewrite a lot of stuff. So this is one of the advantages of moving faster in this. So I think, yeah, that's really the way we look at like the competition and the companies in this space. We just have to keep moving fast, keep serving the customers well, and things will work out easily.
Makes sense, Rohit. Moving ahead, what was your growth metric in the initial days? Is it something which is different right now? How did you define your KPIs and figured out how to grow from the 0 to 1 stage to 1 to 10 stage?
Sure. Yeah, I'll let Pratik take that one.
Yeah, so 0 to 1 stage, it's so there are different stages of the company, right? I think 0 to 1 is where you've just launched the product and you want to see whether it works or not, right? You need to make the product better as well. So, but I think Rohit attended one of the workshops in Axel, and I think the partners there put it out really well. So, in the initial days, you need to find early adopters, who would try your product, who would test your product, who would give you feedback. And I think that's what we focused on. Initial 3-4 months, we hardly had like about 10 customers, but we were hell bent on sort of like serving those 10 customers. A lot of things, a lot of requests started coming in, as in when the volume scaled up, the product went through a bunch of iterations as well. So I think our core, we didn't have a core metric back then. We just had to like identify our first set of customers and then say, let's make the product work for these 10 customers. Once we knew that, hey, our flows are working and we have a stable product, is when we decided to sort of scale up. So I think as of today, we will touch about 100 customers really soon. These are paying customers, of course, and we're close to that number. We've not hit that number yet. So that is one metric that we really track on, because we have a bunch of marketing channels across inbounds, across outbounds, across social media. So again, I think how do those perform and how do those translate to engagements within with the company, and how many of those prospects convert. So I think new customers was always a big one and still is. Second is we've started to focus more on the quality of the customers, and we actively do that. I think there are some early stage customers, there are some bigger fish to fry. So again, I think that is something that we actively look at as well. And from a metric perspective or from a growth perspective, the more like we grow when our customers grow, right? So the more our customers use our platform, the better is it for us, the more money we make. And the best way to do that is to track the number of API hits, or just to put it in plain language, how many times has the client called our systems, right? So are the customers even using our platform? So we track that quite extensively, and then we have. And since I come from the analyst or analysis background, I'm able to look at data and I'm able to decide what the next step should be from a customer perspective. We see some cases where the customer is not interacting much, and then when we speak to the customer, we find out why is that the case. We've seen some of our best customers scale up quite aggressively. So they were only doing a couple of thousand of hits per day. Today they're doing about 1 million hits. So just seeing that scale, I think, is something that we actively track as well. I think just to sort of summarize, one is business usage, which is the number of API hits. Second is our activity on social media. So we do everything right from what are the kind of impressions that we got across social media, and how has that translated into number of signups for us. We also track our outbound activity, which is number of emails, number of sales calls that we do every week. And I think all of that sort of beautifully fits into one particular framework on how's the flywheel or how's the business engine running for us. And we have a good visibility of how does that look like 5x or 10x down the line. So yeah, I think that's we've kept it quite simple. We've not like overcomplicated it for no reason, because again, considering the stage that we are at, it doesn't make a lot of sense to drill into the deepest metrics and then not find that insight that you're looking at, because and I think that just takes some experience to sort of figure out what should you really be looking at. So I guess my key takeaway here would be just to focus on like 4 or 5 North Star metrics, and then if one of the North Star metrics goes haywire, then you dig a bit deeper into it. That why did that work out or why did that not work out?
Thanks, Prateek. That's a very broad overview of defining a metrics and chasing that in a early stage company. Moving ahead, how does the next year look like for Decentro? If you can give us an overview of the fintech ecosystem overall, and how do you plan to grow in this ecosystem?
Sure. Yeah, I think fintech ecosystem is really, I would say, I think the way it's evolving in India is really unique. It's very different from the way it has evolved across the world. Like if you look at the public infrastructure that has been built out, including UPI and the account aggregators, these are, I would say, probably one of the only countries in India, sorry, in the world, where this has happened. So I think building on top of this public infra has provided a lot of opportunities. Like the number of business models and the number of fintechs that can exist has exploded manifold purely because of this infrastructure. And obviously, companies like us and other infrastructure companies are helping them move faster along with it. So I think overall, you will see a few very key trends emerging, and this probably will become like a very, very long conversation if we dig into that. But yes, at a very high level, you'll see a wealth tech sector emerging as well. Like I'm sure you're seeing many of your friends and probably yourself getting into the investment domain very early on, which was new to people 10 years or 5 years back. Right? People used to start investing 25 at the age of 25 or maybe at 30, right? Which is now happening at the age of 18 or even less. So that's new, and that's like I would say a great development for the ecosystem. Then I think data transparency, the way data is exchanged across parties, has become more streamlined. People are becoming very conscious about the way they share the data, right? And obviously the institutions are becoming very conscious as well on how to store and manage the data. And you can see it from the numerous localization laws and data privacy laws that keep on coming in from time to time. So that is a direct impact on the fintech ecosystem and the type of companies that can be run. And I think then there is this always healthy competitive dynamic between your UPI, which is exploding like anything, and then on the other side, card payments, right, which is still growing, of course, at a healthy pace. People are still get issuing more cards. So that's an interesting thing to see, how it balances out in the long term. And currently, of course, it's a fairly healthy mix of both UPI and card payments at any point in time. So yeah, I think these are a few trends that I see on the fintech side, and of course, these are a few of the ones that we are monitoring very closely, and they also influence the way we develop our products.
Perfect. Thank you, Rohit. So moving forward to a very different topic, which most of the fellows must be waiting for, which is around Y Combinator. How did you get into Y Combinator? How was your journey over there? How did Y Combinator help you in shaping up what Decentro is right now? If you can deep dive into it.
Sure. Yeah. So I think YC by default is it's basically much streamlined now. Earlier it used to be a very ad hoc process when they started out. So from our perspective, the process was quite simple. It's not that complicated. Of course, it's very time consuming. So you have to spend a lot of time in terms of refining your application, and just being ready for that final interview as well. The best thing that works out is just being yourself and playing to your strength. Is pretty much I would say the same as being a founder as well as entering something as competitive as a Y Combinator. So don't really worry about what others are doing and what other business models look like and all that stuff. Like YC rarely looks at that, right? And this is one of the good things about them, as an investor as well as an affiliate. Right? So they will just focus on you. They will not focus on hey, there are 100 other companies that are existing and doing the same thing. That's fine, right? As long as you know what you're doing and you're clear on that, we are here to back you, right? So that's the philosophy of YC. So just focus on yourself, focus on your business, right? This was, I would say, the feedback that I got and really worked out for us as well. So from a process perspective, it's fairly straightforward. It's an application which takes a few weeks, at least that's the time. Typically, one should spend on the application and then the interview. That happens immediately after that. And yeah, post the interview, you get an update pretty much the same day or the next day, whether you are in or not. And I think now I would say there are ample opportunities outside YC as well. So, like just to be, I would say conscious of, like rejection there. So don't worry about it. Like it's okay. There are good companies that have not gone through YC as well. So it's okay. But yes, I think going through that really helps you a lot. So coming to, where it help Decentro specifically, the network expanded manifold. That was one. So we were actually able to tap into a lot of the YC partners' knowledge, right? Their existing experience, right? And then these guys have seen companies like Brex, for example, Stripe, scale up, and these are massive fintech companies now, in the US. So I think you're just learning from that experience and even interacting with the founders, firsthand is really good. Like, that's really hard to happen. So getting that one-on-one time. And then second is more on the partner side or potential customer side. A lot of these YC companies are essentially startups in the same stage, and we serve startups to start with. So yeah, we were able to get a lot of good customers out of the YC cohort, and having been in YC, they were also able to have confidence on us and our abilities. Right? And then the third thing is it puts you in a great league when it comes to a brand. Right? So, and this is one of the reasons why we really value the way we position ourselves in the media, or in the world, right, in general, from a social perspective. So this is where really YC puts you in a good position from a branding and a league perspective. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Can you share some early stage mistakes that you have done before? Some silly ones also, if you are comfortable in sharing in the early stages, so that the founders can learn what to avoid.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I think one of the silliest mistakes, and I'm really surprised I did that, was hiring a developer, one of our developers early on, without testing him. Testing in the sense like really giving him like a test, in terms of coding. So now we don't do that, right? I mean, obviously we learn from that, and now we don't let somebody pass through, if he doesn't get through that test. And in fact, I'm sure many of the developers here have gone through different coding interviews at different companies. This is the reason we take it, right? To avoid this mistake, right? Because it's painful for the company and it's painful for you if it happens, where the company has to part with. So yeah, I think that was one mistake. We hired the wrong person. Wasn't really a strong, fit. From a culture perspective, obviously it's hard, like it's very hard to make out the culture fit in the first interview. You have to spend time with the person. But yeah, I think development is something which we are very now clear on, that we'll never take a person without an interview or coding interview. So I think that was one silly mistake that we did. And let me see what else. I think this is the one which really comes to the top of my mind. Obviously, in the first one there were a lot of silly mistakes when we were running for the first time. Definitely, I think in hiring, in interns, a bunch of stuff which we learned along the way, right? Who to hire, who not to hire, and what kind of products not. So I think one of the mistakes that comes to mind in the previous company is we had two products running at the same time, and one was really growing fast, one was growing slowly but was generating revenue. So it's like this one was generating some decent revenue but still growing extremely slowly, and the second one was growing extremely fast, right? But not generating revenue, for actually burning it. So from a consumer perspective, it was clear that we had to go to the second one, right? If we were to build a B2C company, we should go on the fast growing one, even if it was burning money. But we didn't take that call for a long time. That we took that call after 1.5 years, which was not a right thing to do, right? So our focus was just factored into two products, basically. So that was something we learned from. I mean, I learned from personally, and we're very clear on, okay, really monitor the growth of each and every product in this company and see where to dedicate their efforts to. Yeah, Prateek probably might have a couple more as well.
Yeah, one comes to my mind as well. On the business side, I guess when we just launched our product and we were talking to investors and all, I think investors did point us out that hey, yes, competition is doing X, why aren't you doing Y, Z? That sort of got into my head, and I was overly obsessed on what the competition is doing, right? Difficult to resist, but initial days I was doing that. I think over time you just evolve to a phase where you focus more on your customers, you focus more on the landscape versus the competition. So I think that's one of my personal early mistakes that I've done. it's not, the second thing is not really a mistake per se, but then since I've been on the other side, which is the investing side, I've seen, just like Rohit had covered hiring, I've seen a lot of startups choose wrong investors. When I say wrong investors, I mean although on a thesis level the investor is convinced, but with respect to how you're building the companies, where there is a disconnect between you and your lead investor. So choosing the right investor is really, really, and yeah, I'm going to I can repeat this 1,000 times, that it's really important to do that, because one wrong investor can completely change the path of your company. And then I think I've seen, again, I think there are many stories that I can I can recite some other day, but that is I think that's a really important one. Anything else that comes to my mind? I think I covered this before, but not overly obsessed on metrics, right? Depending on the stage, you need to be obsessed on metrics. So not really worrying about, oh, I'm not making enough revenues, or oh, I'm because each business is unique, right? You need in some businesses you need to burn a lot of money and then sort of reach that critical mass, and then suddenly next day you're profitable, right? So it's okay to sort of invest, having that right mindset of you can't be playing too safe as well, right? For example, I always thought that we've raised a round of funding, let's play it safe and let's not be very aggressive, but then you end up realizing that if you're not aggressive, then someone else will just come and eat your pie in the market. So I think this is very specific for VC funded businesses. If and again, I think the idea there is you need to wisely decide when to scale up aggressively or just to take a pause, right? I think that is something that context switching is highly important. Anything else that comes? I think hiring, Rohit covered as well. I think hiring, do reference checks, I think, for top hires. I guess that
seems like a good startup idea. I mean, the folks who are helping startups hire early stage talent.
Yeah, a lot of
like a good sector.
I think a few companies are doing that. In fact, I've seen people complain, and then I've seen some feedback. So I do want to check that out as well. But yeah, I think these are sort of like the ones that that should cover most of at least most of the ones that we've seen in our journey.
Sure. Thank you so much, Rohit and Prateek, for walking me through all these questions and giving us a broad level overview of the fintech sector and Decentro's journey as well.